So I'm Ed Cook, and I work for a company called Resource Futures, and we're an environmental consultancy based in Bristol that specialises in waste management. So I'm a waste management consultant, which I think, looking around here, makes me one of the most boring people in the room. But I haven't always been like that. I worked in the events industry for about 10 years as a waste management contractor, as a cleansing contractor. I'm just looking for my screen now. Oh, have we gone backwards or forwards there? Oh, look, there we go. Oh, yeah, there we go. And one of the questions a lot of people ask me these days is, what's the point in recycling? You hear things like, doesn't it take more energy to recycle something than it does to produce it in the first place? So I'm going to address some of that today. I'm going to talk a little bit about litter. And then finally, I'm going to bring up a subject which I've brought back at previous events, which is, I think the events industry suffers from a bit of a crisis of credibility when it comes to reporting their waste. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit towards the end. But before I start, I wanted to just talk about, oh, look, there we go, the economics of recycling. So recycling is really expensive. This is an example. This is plastic. So these are the operating costs for recycling plastic at different stages of the process. And you'll see that it's incredibly expensive when you compare it to landfill or incineration when you go across the value chain. Now, there's a little bit of money to be made. So plastics are, different polymers are worth different amounts of money as you go along the chain. So you get about £800 a tonne or £700 when you account for process loss. So there's not a huge amount of money in recycling. So I really like charts, and this first chart, hopefully, this compares the life cycle impact or the carbon impact of treating waste in different ways. So the green bars.
There's no green.
Yellow? Oh, does that look yellow to you? Yellow. That's a green bar for me. The first one, the yellow bar. Okay, so the yellow bar represents the carbon impact of generating a particular type of waste. See if I can find some water here. Sorry, my mouth's gone dry now. Thank you. So the yellow bar represents the impact of producing a particular type of waste. And if you look at textiles, you see it's incredibly high. So one of the take-home messages from today is don't buy too many T-shirts. Now, the purple bar, does that look purple to you? Yeah, okay, good. That's, you'll see with that bar, the impact goes up slightly with textiles. So that's if you landfill textiles. The overall life cycle impact will go up slightly. The grey bar is the impact of incinerating those textiles. So that's also gone up a little bit from the generation stage, and that's partly as a result of the fossil fuels which are contained within your clothes. So a lot of our clothes are made of plastic. And you'll see that the orange bar represents what happens when you recycle textiles. So it's hugely beneficial to recycle textiles. Another one which is worth pointing out from here is aluminium. You can see there that the benefit of either incinerating or landfilling aluminium is about the same as production, but recycling is hugely beneficial when it comes to aluminium, and that's because of the enormous environmental impact of extracting bauxite. So this is the same graph again, but the reason I've put this up, I've taken the first two out. So I've taken textiles and aluminium out. Oh. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because of plastic. So you can see that plastic generation and landfilling of plastic have exactly the same, stand in front of the speaker, you can tell I'm not technically minded, have exactly the same impact. If you put plastic in landfill, nothing happens to it. Just sits there for years and years and years, might biodegrade a little bit. But once you incinerate plastic, the life cycle impact goes up hugely. Plastic is a fossil fuel, and recycling plastic is slightly beneficial. And another one that I wanted to point out here was wood. So you'll see that wood, the impact of landfilling wood is much, much, much greater than recycling or incinerating it. And that's because wood creates methane, breaks down anaerobically in landfill. But the interesting thing about wood is you'll see that the difference between recycling it and incinerating it is almost nothing. So this is the waste hierarchy, and this is not the waste hierarchy I was expecting to show you. This is actually this is actually a slightly more. I was going to show you a simplified version, but this is quite a complex waste hierarchy, and it's got a number of different stages that have been put there to cope with waste in developing countries. At the bottom of the waste hierarchy in Europe, we just have a simple category which is disposal. So this waste hierarchy actually accounts for situations where there's actually a stage below landfill, which is open dumping and open burning. Now, the important thing is that depending on what you do with your waste or the type of treatment facility that you send your waste to will depend on how you can report what you do with that waste according to the waste hierarchy. So, for instance, if you choose to incinerate your waste, you can't call that recycling. If you are recycling your waste, source segregation, or sending it to a materials recovery facility, then you get to call that recycling, and you don't get to call that reuse. Now, I'm really winging it because I don't have any of my slides that I was about to present to you. Okay. So, why should we care about litter? Litter's unsightly. We all know that. Nobody likes to see litter. Now, the reason that I put this section in is because when I was speaking to Claire in preparation for this event, she fielded the idea, and this was a scenario in which you might choose to leave all of your litter, so not clear up any litter during the show, and just clear it all up at the end. Does anyone think that's a good idea? I mean, economically, it sounds go on.
I just saw one festival this summer, the litter pickers were actually doing recycling and putting it in the right bags. But when the festival goers were collecting it, they completely mixed it, and then it's unlikely it went to recycling because it was too much contaminated in the room.
Okay, so but why were the festival goers picking up recycling? Why were they collecting it?
Well, they were just putting it in the bin. They were just clearing up that area, but they were mixing the waste.
Yeah.
But that's
Sure. So there are a couple of main impacts from litter out there in the wider world. So we've got terrestrial damage. So if you strewn the countryside with plastic bags and cans and such like, the chances are it's going to get eaten by wildlife. Now, is that a problem on an event site? No. So on an event site, you're there for 2 or 3 days, and assuming that you're going to clear it up at the end of the event, does it then become a problem? I'm just putting it out there, you're looking bewildered.
It generates more litter. If people see it on the ground,
Yep.
they'll create more litter.
Okay, so there's a problem. Yep. So there's a problem with behaviour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Litter, they think, well, it's really dirty. Mine can, and my sibling will like be bad for it. It's not going to have a huge impact. It's really dirty.
Yep. And what about marine pollution? We're all hearing about marine pollution these days. Do festivals contribute to marine pollution?
Yeah.
How?
What if your event is next is on the ocean?
Yes.
Near the water or in the waterway?
I couldn't agree more.
Litter goes down the drain.
Yeah.
in the ocean.
What about on a site which doesn't have a watercourse? Does anyone here run a festival on a site without a watercourse? Do you think you create marine pollution?
Yeah, but quite remotely, I would say. We are a landlocked country and there's no sea on the side. But I do believe there's an impact on marine life.
Okay. Sorry? Plastic cup go into the water table? So what toxins do we get from waste at festivals?
Heavy metals.
Really? Oh, heavy metal. That was good. I like that. Heavy metal. Sorry?
Paints or glitter.
Glitter? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay.
Medicaments.
Yeah.
Toxins from shampoo.
Sorry?
Like the medicaments, the
Medical?
medicines.
Drugs.
So we're throwing a lot of drugs on the floor. Yeah, but yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Also, people unfortunately urinate in
Okay.
those places.
Okay.
Because a tea in the park got a bit of a bashing for that one year, I remember.
Yeah.
And
So
the headline was pee in the park.
pee in the park.
There was more urine in the water than there should have been.
Okay.
And that was just down to the public not being respectful of science.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, not my area. Solid waste here. Yeah.
Food plastics contain loads of phthalates, which is a hormone disruptor.
Some of them do. Yeah.
Most of them do, most of
Yeah. What do the packaging plastics contain phthalates?
them. Yeah, and plastic bottlers do as well.
Do they? Okay. Okay. So how are those phthalates going to get into the environment?
We're going to drink the stuff mainly.
Okay, so through us. Maybe. Yes.
I say cigarette butts, but obviously I'm biased. So I'm not gonna
Sure.
say anything.
Sure. So we're not really fans of this idea of leaving everything till the end. No. So I did have a slide to give there, but I've got this one instead. Maybe this will work. Oh, that is loud. Can I make that quieter? Is there a techie here? I think that's going to be a bit too loud. Does anyone know how to?
Yeah, me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, shall I try that?
120 decibels.
Nope. How about that? Does anyone know where this is? So I think actually that festival organisers have a unique opportunity to communicate with their audiences. And I think actually they have a bit of an obligation because you're creating this kind of microcosm. Does anyone know what's going to happen? Here we go. And I think you've got all these young, impressionable minds who are going to go out into the world.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
And take the things that they've learned into their normal lives. So sorry if this is someone's cannon in the room. Oh look there! Oh no, it's just walked in. So I'm not really. I'm not going to pass judgment on this. I think it's going to end in a second. But you can now. I have it on good authority, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think these. I think all of this confetti is actually biodegradable. It's little bits of tissue. Now, it's spreading across the countryside. Do people think that that's going to pollute the terrestrial environment?
Depends on the materials.
It does.
It could have nutrients in it.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
could be made good.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I think it will.
You think it'll pollute the environment, even though? But what if it breaks down?
I think it'll break down.
Biodegradable, very, very thin paper confetti, which, I mean, obviously it's, you can call it litter in one way, but it's by the next morning it mostly kind of vanished, so maybe it's gone into the ground, but
I would be surprised if it completely vanished by the next morning, but I do think it breaks down, and I don't think it. But my view is I'm not that bothered about that stuff being blown across the countryside, not from a terrestrial pollution point of view. From a visual point of view, maybe. But I think the point that I wanted to make here, and I'm going to put this out to the audience, and I don't want to be casting criticism here, but I think it's the behavioural aspect that needs to be addressed when we're looking at things like this. And I kind of see stunts like this kind of on the same level as using any kind of disposable packaging or any kind of disposable cups. You're essentially, as event organisers, creating a very, very large litter problem.
Try to get the litter from between it as well.
Yeah.
The actual litter that will.
I mean, you can't clean that up. I can see two waste managers here. Yeah, let's be clear. You cannot clear up that confetti with a team of litter pickers. It's impossible. I've done it. Or I haven't done it. Yeah.
Even biodegradable stuff, that makes it into the water course, that will eat up the oxygen in the water course.
So biochemical oxygen demand, yes,
Exactly, yeah.
indeed. Yeah, so if that did get into the watercourse, but Is it near a river? Is it near a river?
Not that part of the site. It's the flyer as well if anyone wants to.
Okay. Oh.
Or just leaves.
Okay, let's try another slide. So this must be before I had the widescreen version, and they all look a bit stretched. I took this photograph a few years back at an event, and I came across this group of young people, and I offered them a bin bag. And they said, no, we're just chucking it here. So I just took a photo of them. That's all. I didn't know what else to do. But this is the kind of behaviour that we're faced with. I've got another picture here. Oh yes, this is pretty typical scene. I mean, I could get endless pictures of things that I didn't know were coming in this presentation. Oh look, this one's my fault. So this is lack of. I caused this pile. I didn't provide this event company with the right facilities. So the people who were the traders and the stages here, I didn't give them any bins, so they just made a big pile of it. So I think as event organisers, event contractors, if you don't provide people with the right facilities, how do we expect them to behave any better? Okay, that's another one. And another waste hierarchy. Pulled it back. I got a clap in the end, didn't I? So I can see I've brought up a few controversial subjects there, and seem to have got away with a completely different slide set. Sorry, Rob. Yeah. Well, you're on next, aren't you? Get my home back. Okay. Has anyone got any questions?
I just wondered, because of the use of the word single-use plastics seems to be getting through to the younger generation, and it's becoming a phrase. Is that going to have any benefit for them to understand that single-use plastics are going to be damaging their environment and their future children, etc.? So think about it.
I'm a little bit. You've probably noticed I'm a bit of a skeptic on a few things. I'm a little bit skeptical about this whole plastic thing at the moment, because actually we haven't got a clue what to do about it. As a waste industry, manufacturing, nobody really knows what to do. And at the moment, I feel like we're scrabbling around looking for compostable this and compostable that. We don't know how to process any of these materials. We've got ideas about reusables, but there are some cases where reusables seem to have more of an impact than disposables. So I'm a little bit sceptical that simply banning plastic is going to be the answer, and I'm going to sit completely on the fence with that one.
No, single-use means basically reusable. So if you're reusing, there's obviously going to be a lot less waste that's single-use.
Absolutely. So there'll certainly be less waste, but waste is a very, very small part of the entire life cycle of a product. So the majority of the life cycle impact of products comes in the manufacturing and the transport. Waste is something like that, right at the end. Go for it.
Yeah, so that was my point I made earlier about the majority of the impact is in the manufacturing. So
Yes.
the more disposable products you manufacture, it quite rapidly overtakes the impact of manufacturing a more durable.
In all cases. Okay. Now, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to throw you maybe a quite complicated topic, but I'll try and keep it quick. What's going on here with everyone freaking out about China and recycling?
I'll tell you about that, yeah.
Can you give us I'm from New Zealand, and it's not affecting us here, but it's affecting Australia massively, but yeah.
There's quite a lot of misinformation, so I'll clear it up. China have, since January the 1st this year, China banned the imports of mixed papers. So mixed papers being paper and cardboard usually mixed together. That's what we call mixed papers in the recycling business. So they've banned that. You can't import that into China. They've also banned the import of post-consumer plastics. So that pretty much means anything that has come into human hands can't be sent to China anymore. So this is millions and millions of tons of material that we now have to find a new home for. So I guess now there's some other things like vanadium and textiles, but they weren't really importing any of those things anyway. But I think the important thing for us is we now, well, in the West, and it was Europe, Japan, USA, maybe Australia a bit. Sending all of these materials to China. So now we've got to figure something else out. Now I know that we're rerouting some of those materials to places like India, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, lots of those places, but not very much at all. So I know there is some stockpiling going on, and I suspect that a lot of that material will end up being burnt across the world. Does that answer the question? Yes.
I've got one about just going back to compostables.
Oh, yes.
Do you think the waste industry will find a solution to it if more people are using it in terms of the compostable, but also the PLA biodegradable plastics? Do you think?
I've got a slide actually. Look, there's one here. There we go. Right, that's something about compostables. There we go. That wasn't even going to be in the presentation, so I don't know what that's doing there. So this is bioplastic generation. I don't know why that slide's in there. I did this slide for I stood up in front of the OECD a few weeks back, and they got this slide. So this shows you compost. See if I can get around here. So you can see that about 2/3 of all bioplastics are actually non-biodegradable materials. This big chunk along the bottom here, and these ones, these are what you call drop-in plastics. So these are exactly the same as any other plastic. Along the top here, these are various biopolymers. Now the issue, I'll jump back in the middle, the issue that we have with bioplastics in this country is nobody can process them. Okay, so there aren't any composting plants that will take this stuff. I mean, I tried this for years. But basically, the residence time to get these things fully composted is about 26 weeks, including maturation. And virtually all plants in the UK only process material for about 8 weeks, because it's all about land. We haven't got much land over here, so they're trying to get stuff in quickly, compost it quickly, and get it out the door. The other problem is consistency. Have I got wind it up. The other problem is consistency, and the other problem is identification. So they can't identify these plastics when they come through the plant, so they think they're contaminants. And the last issue with compostable plastics is that they contaminate the other recyclable materials. So I have to say, I don't think that is the answer for us at the moment. We've got time for one more question, Shiad. Is that it? Sorry. Okay, thank you.